Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Ashtadhara Shuddha Shishimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Ashtadhara Shuddha Shishimad Divine Grace The Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Can you pass me the Bhagavatam, Francisco? Please. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6 Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 18, Deity's vows to kill King Indra, text 75. Aradhyatma pradam devam swatmanam jagadishwaram ko vrinita Sparsham Buddha Syan Narake Pi Yat Aradhyatma Pradam Devam Satmanam Jagadishwaram Kovranita Guna Sparsham Buddha Syan Narake Pi Yat Aradhyatma Pradam Devam Satmanam Jagadishwaram Kovranita Gunasparsham Buddhasyanarake Piyat Aradhyatma Pradam Devam Satmanam Jagadishwaram Kovranita Gunasparsham Buddhasyanarake Piyat Aradhya, after worshipping. Atma Pradam, who gives himself. Devam, the Lord. Swa Atmanam, the most dear. Jagat Ishwaram, the Lord of the universe. Kaha, what? Pranita, would choose. Gunasparsham, material happiness. Buddha, intelligent person. Syat is Nadake and hell. Api, even. Yet, which. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The ultimate goal of all ambitions is to become a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If an intelligent man serves the most dear Lord, who gives himself to his devotees, how can he desire material happiness, which is available even in hell? Purport. An intelligent man will never aspire to become a devotee to achieve material happiness. That is the test of a devotee. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, Nadanam na janam na sundarim kavitam ba jagadishakam mama janmani janmani shvare bhavatad bhakti rahoita ki toi. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. Pure devotee never begs the Lord for material happiness in the shape of riches, followers, a good wife, or even mukti. The Lord promises, however, yoga chemam vihamiham. I voluntarily bring everything necessary for my service. So I'll read a few more. Taridam mamadurjanyam bali shashya mahi yasi chantumarhasi matastvam dishtya garbo pratoditaha. O my mother, O best of all women, I am a fool. Kindly excuse me for whatever offenses I have committed. Your 49 sons have been born unhurt because of your devotional service. As an enemy, I cut them to pieces, but because of your great devotional service, they did not die. Shri text 77. Shri Shukavacha Indrastaya Bayan Gata Shudha Bhavena Tushtaya Marudbi Sahatam Natva Jagama Tri Divam Prabhu. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, the deity was extremely satisfied by Indra's good behavior. Then Indra offered his respects to his aunt with profuse obeisances. And with her permission, he went away to the heavenly planets with his brothers, the Maruts. The last text. Evam te sarvam akatam yanmam tvam pariprichasi mangalam muritam janma kyambuya katayami te. My dear King Parikshit, I have replied as far as possible to the questions you've asked me, especially in regard to this pure, auspicious narration about the Maruts. Now you may inquire further, and I shall explain more. Ascend the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 6th canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Deity Vows to Kill King Indra. All right, so tomorrow, which is Friday, Vijay Prabhu will start us in chapter 19. And then chapter 19 is the last chapter of this canto. Then we're going into the 7th canto. And there is 28 verses in this particular last chapter. Seems like not many purports also. 7th canto is done with Lord Nrsingadev Prahlad Maharaj. Very amazing canto. Om Gyanidivadandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhakam Karitavachalam Pangam Langate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinitaranam Bancha Kapadurubhisha Kripasandubevicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the Shikshashtakam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's 8 verses for the elevation of his followers, for the education and elevation of his followers, is very important, to say the least. It is extremely important to us, and Srila Prabhupada quotes one of the verses in this particular purport, the first purport we read, or the only purport we read, explaining, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioning the standard. What is the standard? The gold standard. I should call it gold because it's saying not to go after wealth. So, the standard of pure devotional service, in that a devotee doesn't want anything that most people are chasing after, most people are endeavoring for. So a devotee doesn't want wealth, they don't want the association of beautiful women, or you could say the opposite sex, means they're not interested in the gratifying their whatever those desires, and they don't want followers. They just want causes devotional service birth after birth. So we see that a lot of people, this is what they're after. They're after wealth. They're after beautiful women. They're after followers. And practically, they'll do anything to achieve these things. It doesn't matter what it is. They'll do whatever they can to achieve these things. Mostly, that means they'll engage in a bunch of austerity, or you could say a bunch of suffering, to attain these things. To attain wealth, people will risk their life, as Vijay Prabhu's pointed out before. For example, in the matter of stealing, I mean, you break into somebody's house, people have guns, as was mentioned before also in previous classes. People have guns, especially in this country. So to break into a house in this country means you're risking your life. It means they could take their gun and shoot you. But people think, all right, let's go for it. I need some wealth. I need to steal something valuable so I could, get some money. So they'll risk their life for this. People will work very hard to attain wealth, just like to become a doctor, right? So many years, hard work, studying. People, there may be some sentiment, okay, I want to help, all right, well, there's certain degrees of that going on in the world. People want to be a doctor to help people. But it might be mixed with other desires also, like wealth. But whatever the case is, they have to work hard for that. And not only in terms of becoming qualified to become a doctor, but afterwards as well. Like Amogulila Prabhu was telling me about his father, surgeon, here in San Diego. And he was telling me about his brother wanting to become a surgeon, and he was thinking about doing surgery on eyes. Can you imagine that? Eye surgeon. We were joking that you have to have a very steady hand, right? You can't be like, oh, whoops, I had too much coffee, or fall asleep or something. You can't, can't do anything like that. Eye surgeon, right? There's going to be some problems. But you have to work very hard, and he was telling me that, which is, I'm sure, common amongst doctors, but there's work schedules that require that you have 2 weeks in a month where you're just on call. Means that they may call you at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, "We got emergency. Come on down, and we need you to do the surgery." And then after you already worked a 12-hour job, or the most they're allowed to work is 16 hours, and a lot of them do, or some of them do. So you have to work hard to amass wealth. So people will, and that's in a somewhat, relatively speaking, pious way. I mean, not exactly pious, but relatively speaking. I mean, people do many sinful things for money. Like people kill people for money. They call those hit men or hit women. Mercenaries, yeah. Or you could say infatuation with women. People also just will practically do anything, and it could get really ugly. Much of the ugly news of the world that we hear, or that we hear secondhand or firsthand, or maybe we don't hear, but anyways, much of the news of the world, the ugly news of the world, means violence and et cetera, et cetera. It's all revolving around this you could say, romantic relationships gone bad. And it gets really ugly, like people out of anger, out of madness, they may kill the other person that they supposedly loved at one point. And also people's infatuation in terms of trying to, you could say, how they used to call in the old days, have a lady's hand. They don't call it that anymore. Have a lady's hand means to be the boyfriend of a particular girl, to be the husband of a particular girl. It could get really ugly. So we could see, and also the number of followers. I mean, especially nowadays, because you could say this has become even more of a thing with the advent. I don't know if we call it advent. It seems kind of with the introduction of social media, which is a worldwide thing. It's not just social medias in America, it's worldwide. So not that you could just get followers in America, you get followers worldwide for doing any sane or doing any nonsensical thing online. And generally, the most obscene or the most foolish things get the most views. That's what wins, right? So people will do practically anything. All right, let me get some views, let me get some followers, which is just really unfortunate. So analyzing these particular things, you say, well, how is one supposed to rise above them? Because devotees, they join the Hare Krishna movement, and everyone is chasing after these things. And then we're supposed to not do that. We're supposed to give it up altogether. So how does one do that? And even within Krishna consciousness, these things, right? Whatever, wealth or beautiful women or followers, I mean, they'd also, in Krishna consciousness, or people, in the Hare Krishna movement may go after these things. You could say more in a spiritual sense. if you want to call it that. But how are we supposed to overcome all this? How are we supposed to rise beyond this? And that's the beauty of learning to be a Goswami, means a controller of one's senses. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to accept a danda, a staff, and have the name Swami at the end of their name. But all devotees should be Goswamis, in the sense that they are able to see through the illusion of these things, and they're able to not be interested in chasing after them. It's just, so what? And another thing is that wealth may come. It's not evil. Wealth may come. But we use that wealth for Krishna service. So there's so many things we could do with wealth, right? We're going to get some new doors in the front. So that requires some wealth. Where do you want to look? I mean, wherever you look. I mean, the paint on these walls require wealth. All the different designing that they did on these walls required material, which means it required some wealth. The floors they put in here, the lights, microphone stands, everything that we're using on this temple property requires some wealth. That clock that Brisa bought for her guru, Vajrayana Swami, because he'd always see this little clock, and so she intelligently bought that. So it requires wealth, so it's okay, wealth is fine, just provided we use it properly. But therefore we need to be Goswami. Because it says that if we're not a Goswami, then we'll squander it on foolish things. So therefore it's very important to be Goswami. And I think Chanakya Pandit, he says something like, of course some people don't like what he says, but anyways, Prabhupada will quote him. Chanakya Pandit said something like, there's different enemies. You know the different enemies? Does anyone remember? Beautiful wife. Mother is no character. I don't remember that one, but yeah, remarried. Father who has debt. Yeah. Son's a rascal. Yeah. So yeah, with this particular desire, nor to desire beautiful women. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that he doesn't desire to enjoy beautiful women. He doesn't want a beautiful spouse. So yeah, this obviously could be a big distraction. Also, like Chanakya Pandit saying, okay, enemy is a beautiful wife, you can say, well, that's not very nice. But that's what he's saying. Means there's a heavy chance that's going to be a very big distraction. And also vice versa for women. Women married to a man, that's the whole problem in the material world. Man is seeing a woman in the wrong light, woman seeing a man in the wrong light, and then there's issues. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he said this, many of his followers were married. They did have wives. So it's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu required all of his followers to be brahmacharis and sannyasis, but he's commenting here that, be careful, because it's a big illusion within this world. So, be careful for the brahmacharis and for the sannyasis and for the householders. course, I don't. Yeah. So to be careful, it's an important point. And with the followers, it's not that. Again, followers may come. People may follow us. We may have a social media page, and people may click and follow us. Or we may be in a particular community, and people may follow us. Or we may travel to a number of communities, and people may follow us. They identify as a follower of yeah. So that isn't bad necessarily, but it means we should be leading them properly, and therefore it requires be a Goswami. Because if we're not a Goswami, then we think, okay, great, yeah, I got followers, and I'm so great, and I'm, and then we're forgetting all about Krishna, we're forgetting all about Srila Prabhupada, we're forgetting all about everything besides the fact that somebody's following us. But the whole point of people following us is we want to bring them to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, we want to bring them to the lotus feet of Krishna, and we're teaching them how to do that. And we're trying to help them in their Krishna consciousness. We're trying to encourage them. So yeah, none of these things, these things can be utilized, but simultaneously Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, be careful about these things. So similarly, as a materialist suffers a lot, engages in a lot of hard work and suffering to attain wealth and beautiful women and followers. So similarly, devotees should work tirelessly, they should work hard, they should suffer for Krishna. And to think that there's not going to be any suffering means we are an illusion. Because there will be suffering. We will have to go through suffering to attain Krishna. It's not so easy. Just as these materialists, these karmis or vikarmis, suffer really hard to attain these beautiful women and wealth and followers. Don't think that they just got it automatically. They suffered hard, or they suffered a lot. So similarly, devotees have to suffer, whether they like that or not. And that's what it means to be in the material world. It means Dukkhalam Shashvatam, it's a place of suffering. So we have to choose, do we want to suffer to attain some foolish goals that aren't going to make us happy in the first place, or we want to suffer for Krishna? And to think that we're going to be somewhere in the middle, we're just going to be suffering the mode of ignorance, which leads to destruction. What is the mode of ignorance? Sleep. What is the mode of ignorance? Intoxication. What is the mode of ignorance? Madness. We become mad over time. And then before you know it, we're in a hotel in Tijuana, trying to find our next fix of heroin. Wondering what happened. And then people may laugh about it. Oh yeah, it will never happen to me. But we've had devotees who were very powerful, very together, very Brahminical on the altar, and then they're ending up in motel, junkie motel in Tijuana, looking for their next fix, due to the mode of ignorance, progression of the mode of ignorance. And to think that the mode of ignorance isn't going to progress, we're also an illusion. So therefore, there's a great stress on the mode of goodness to fight, to struggle, to suffer, to work hard, to try to move towards the mode of goodness. Which means to practically, in the conditioned state, to force ourselves to do the right thing. To force ourselves to chant Hare Krishna because we don't have any taste for it. to force ourselves to listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam, although our mind wants to go all over the universe. To force ourselves just to take prasadam, although our tongue wants to go taste everything in San Diego. To force ourselves to not think about sense gratification. It requires that. And that means suffering, because we're attached to this material world. But without that struggle, without that suffer, one is never going to overcome it. And they're always going to be a godas, servant of their senses. And they're always going to suffer with no benefit. To be a godas means to suffer with no benefit. To be a Goswami means to, when one becomes a Goswami, there's a lot less suffering, but to become a Goswami means to suffer with benefit, ultimately. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada would say by force, we have to force ourselves to think about Krishna because we don't have attraction. And over time, that's called sadhana bhakti. Means we don't feel like it sometimes, but we do it anyways because we know it's good for us, because our spiritual master said we should. And you say, oh, that sounds like I'm being controlled. Well, you could take that control, you could take the control of the material energy and be like an absolute donkey, or dancing dogs in the hands of Maya. Eventually become a dancing dogs in the hands of a materialistic, non-God conscious woman, or for women in the hands of a non-God conscious man, a dancing, I don't want to say dog or what, but so, in other words, just waste of human form of life. Now, of course, whatever we do in Krishna consciousness, okay, fine, that's to our benefit. But why prolong the suffering with no gain perpetually? In other words, why be a fool perpetually? Why not just do the right thing? So similarly, the materialists, they suffer for these things. So devotee, in the early stages, has to suffer. They have to go through suffering. And then eventually, they could get to the point of brahmasaukyam tvanantam, unlimited happiness, gradually. So last thing is that, and Krishna promises, Yogachema Vahamyaham, I voluntarily bring everything necessary for my service. So how much do we believe that? Do we believe that Krishna brings everything? Is he going to provide everything for us? Do we believe that? We should believe it. But that also means he gives us everything we need, not just our food and our water and a place to stay, and right? But he also gives us everything we need to make spiritual advancement. But if we don't take advantage of that, that's our fault. Not the temple president, not ISKCON, not the spiritual master, not my service, not so many excuses. It's the fault of the individual for not taking the mercy, not being intelligent. And you say, well, I'm not intelligent. Well, be intelligent. So to take in Srila Prabhupada writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that if one is not determined to get out of illusion, then Krishna, not even Krishna can help. Of course, Krishna can help, but it's a point that's brought up, and when this follower of Lord Chaitanya fell into the hands of the Bhattataris, yeah. In other words, this person was traveling with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he fell into Maya. And but Srila Prabhupada writes in those purports that we have to be determined, and if we're not determined, then I mean, what's the result? So Krishna will help us provided we're determined. We have to be determined. In other words, we have to try. God helps those who help themselves. We have to try. And then Krishna will provide, as he's saying here. So, all right, thank you. Does anybody have any question or comment? What's for breakfast? I'm not sure. Govardhan was supposed to cook. I'm not sure if he cooked. I think maybe. Huh? You're guessing, huh? You saw it? Who's cooking? Saul? Okay, do you have something, Tyler?
Yeah, Govardhan's with Maharaj. That's wonderful. He's back home, so he stayed the night with him last night.
Nice.
I had a question about something that Dravida said yesterday, and I'd like your opinion on it too. And it goes back to what Bhakti Sundar Goswami said too. And Purushottam gave a nice class, and he was talking about there's so many, they say, I don't want to lose the desire to chant Hare Krishna, right? Or let me always chant Hare Krishna. And then he said more than chanting Hare Krishna, we want to have the desire to chant Hare Krishna. And then I remember, I think it was at a home program, they asked Bhakti Sundar Goswami, well, what if you don't have the desire? He goes, then you pray for the desire to desire. Yeah. To chant the holy name. And I thought that was actually pretty potent. So do you know much about that? Like, let's say someone doesn't have a desire, praying for the desire to have the desire. It sounds esoteric. So I'm wondering how something like that would actually function. How would you pray for the desire to have the desire?
Well, sometimes you could say, well, I don't have a desire to chant, right? Say, okay, there's chanting. All right, I don't want to do it. And it's like, why do we want to pray to want to do it? Right? But then someone's saying, well, you should pray for the desire. Anyways, how far you want to go back, I don't know. Pray to pray. I mean, a lot of devotees bring up that Gaur Govinda Swami quote, right? You should cry for Krishna. And if you can't cry for Krishna, then you should cry because you can't cry for Krishna. And if you can't cry because you can't cry for Krishna, then you should cry because you can't cry because you can't cry, something like that. And it goes back. So now, of course, we may say all these things, but ultimately, still, people may be having trouble. Because if someone just really doesn't even have a desire to desire, then what can you do? So therefore, sometimes Krishna will make special arrangements in a devotee's life to purify them, to help them in their Krishna consciousness. And there may be very drastic things that happen in a devotee's life, very intense circumstances. So it's kind of like people sometimes they don't give Krishna any other option. They're like, all right, well, I tell you once, I tell you twice. All right, well, I'm going to start turning up the heat now. And that could come in so many forms: disease, sickness, loss of finances, loss of reputation, loss of position, suffering. So many things it could come in the form of. And so in other words, Krishna's trying to get our attention, like, hey, come on, get with the program. So that may have to happen. In other words, if we don't, the idea is that, okay, first you tell somebody, once, twice, 3 times, and then the Vedic thing is, okay, then after that, then you pull out the danda. Danda means stick. They're not understanding. So therefore they have to be hit with a stick. Sorry, I know it sounds kind of... in other words, there has to be suffering inflicted on them to get the point. Just like in India, just like when they're doing the lockdown, you see all these videos. They tell people stay at home. And it's India, how many people want to stay at home? And, with all due respect, sometimes people, there's so many people, a lot of them, they don't want to follow, look at the roads, the traffic rules, or look at the lack of traffic rules, So naturally, people weren't staying home. They tell them, go home, go home. And then at one point, when they're all going on the street, you see these men, on the motorcycles, and the men walking around, and then And then a police officer would come up to him. And, there'd be some kind of altercation, and the police officer will pull out this bamboo stick and, right in the, backside, like, come on, get going, go home, So it means they're not understanding, so, there's a stick, right? They're practically applying this. Coming from the motherland, India, yeah. So yeah, that may happen in a devotee's life. And say, oh, well, I don't want to chant. All right. Okay, well, I can't desire to chant. All right, well, then what? All right. Because, but the point is this, the suffering inflicted upon a devotee by Krishna is not out of just malice. It's not out of malice. It's to help the devotee, to help them understand where they should be going, what direction they should be going in, to help them come to a higher level. So, yeah. And also, there's some last thing. Maybe Dravida Prabhu wants to say something because it's referring to what he said or when Bhakti Sundar Goswami said. But last thing, one of our acharyas say that if you try to chant, if you try to do this, if you try to do that, if you try to do so many things and nothing's working, then what does he say to do? He said you should go sit down by a Vaishnava. Go sit down by a devotee. And then means associate with the devotee. And by associating with that devotee, one will become advanced, because that devotee will tell them about Krishna. That devotee will, it's good association. In other words, become a friend of a devotee. Sit there and take their guidance. Does anybody have any online? Okay. All right. So tomorrow's the next chapter, new chapter. There seems to be some long verses in this chapter also, the next chapter. Well, at least one, text 7. All right, Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.